I was absolutely searching to find out who I was. And in that time of searching, I had a very good friend who is still a very good friend of mine in Holland, Alto ter Haar. And he and I had a conversation, and he said, who are your idols? Who is an idol? And both of us were very active athletes at a reasonable high level at that point too. And so it would be reasonable to say, well, so-and-so is a brilliant player, and I admire him. But the only answer that came to me is that I don't admire anybody. And he found that a very strange answer, and I had to think about why I answered it that way. But I answered it that way because I really believe that everything there is, everything that ever has been and everything that ever will be, is currently available to any of us. And someone who accesses that more visibly or more noticeably simply has either actively removed the barriers to awareness of that truth, of that everything, of that allness, or just happens to have a better set of antennae. But it doesn't call for admiration. It does call, in my mind, if I come across people who are clearly very happy, and I do come across people who are clearly very happy, often, particularly after they've been here for a while, then I'm really curious, what are they doing? What are they doing to sustain that level of happiness? That's what I'm interested in. But I don't make that about the person. I tend to not personalize a path. So I don't really work with, in my mind, work with individuals who I think have a lot to offer, but I work with what they've done and what their path has been. That I'm interested in. So I'm really, really interested in finding out if you're very happy. Let's find out, what are you doing? I'm really curious. I want to know. So I hope that answers your question. Somebody else asked the question that I had already answered, and that's what unreasonable happiness means. And again, it means that there cannot be a reason for being happy. If there's a reason for being happy, then that reason will indefinitely, absolutely be turned around and become a distraction. The converse of that is also true. There's also no reason to be unhappy. And that perhaps is a little more difficult for people to see and appreciate as being a truth. But that's something we can work on a little later. There's another question from Marshall, and it says, what is true courage? I think that's a really interesting question. What is true courage? It's too bad that Marshall is not sitting in front of me, because I would ask him what he would think the answer is, which is usually how we work. But I will make an effort to answer that question. True courage to me would be to be willing to question everything that I think is true at any time, even when I'm absolutely totally convinced that what I think is true. Is to go back and say, well, I don't really know. Maybe what I believe right now is not true. Maybe what I believe right now, and the opinion I hold so strongly, certainly prevents me from joining with you. And the courage comes in dropping that opinion and dropping that wanting to be right about whatever position I've taken in order to join with you, because that's the only purpose for being on this planet. The only purpose for being on the planet is to be in relationship, to be in a state of oneness. And to do that, it takes a great deal of courage, because in the oneness, I don't exist. And the I that doesn't exist rebels. And the I that doesn't exist then immediately comes up with, I know what courage is, and starts coming up with false courage. And false courage is bravura, it is being loud, it is being overbearing, it is being convincing, it is being all the things that the ego thinks I need to do in order to be somebody. But true courage means I'm willing to drop the idea of being something. And I see that there are questions coming up on my screen, but I can't really read them. So if you could read them out loud as they come in,
What is a good response to someone who is attacking me?
What is a good response to someone who is attacking me? I love that question. It's brilliant. Where do I start with that? Well, there's a very simple teaching. And even though it's simple, it's also devilishly difficult. And that says that the secret of salvation is about this. I am doing this to myself. The secret of salvation is about this. I am doing this to myself. And then it continues saying something like this, and I'm paraphrasing. No matter what the form of the attack or who takes the role of the attacker, still is this the truth. Once I've made that part of my modus operandi, and it has to be, then I would not see attack. I would only see what is truly happening, and that is a cry for love on the part of the person who my ego says is attacking me. And what do I do with the cry for love? I give love to it. However, if I have made an interpretation that I'm being attacked, then that is my cry for love, and I immediately have to jump on that and say, what am I believing about me right now? I believe that I'm being attacked. I believe that I'm being made wrong. I believe that somehow this person is pointing out that I'm not good enough or don't belong or whatever my old beliefs are. One of them is also that I'm not supported. So maybe one of those is being triggered by what I perceive as attack. And once I process that, and we can talk a little bit later about what that process actually looks like, then it's impossible for me to see attack. I won't see it. Even if people point out he or she or is attacking you or is attacking somebody else, it's simply impossible to go there because it doesn't serve me to go there. What serves me to go, where it serves me to go, is to go to the idea and the knowledge and the fact of who I truly am, to go back to the oneness. Imagine if oneness is true, if the Advaita teachers are true, and I certainly know it is, then who can attack whom? There is no one to attack me. So I made up a dear friend of mine, Freddie Wilbers, who works with us at the center and is one of the most joyful, happy people, and some of my friends in Belgium who are listening in know him. I can assume that he says something to me and I can take that as an attack. And I would immediately have to take that back and say, this is not about Freddie, this is about me. I am doing this to me. I'm believing something. Even if somebody calls me names, and you can imagine in our work and in the tense situations and the sometimes pretty dense stories, you can have an experience that you think you're actually being attacked, but it's never true. I cannot be attacked. I can only do that with my thoughts, and it's my thoughts I have to work with. All this work is entirely and completely with our thoughts. I remember a long time ago we did a fantastic workshop with about 60 teenagers on Bowen Island in near Vancouver. And the motto of that 5 or 6 day workshop was, I am preoccupied exclusively with my own mind. And that, if you can imagine being 13, 15, 16 years old, and that's what the kids were in that workshop, what an extraordinary statement that is, and how difficult it would be for someone of that age or any age to accept the fact that I'm working only with my own mind. No one needs to change. So the person that I think is attacking me doesn't need to change. I need to change how I experience it. I need to change my mind about who I am. I then need to see who this person truly is. And then what I see is nothing but a loving, loving creature that is crying for love and has forgotten who it is. I hope that answers your question somewhat. It's a beautiful question. I appreciate it. Thank you. Next question.
So Dolores has a question, and it's, why would I choose to be an African American or any other dark-skinned person in the world who are treated unequally? I'm trying to understand why I choose to come here like this. Can you repeat that, please?
Okay, so the question that Dolores is asking is a very, very good one. And it says, why would I choose, and I'm paraphrasing because my memory isn't, certainly my short-term memory is gone. But I'm paraphrasing. Dolores is asking, why would I choose to come onto this world, into this planet, as a dark-skinned African American, knowing that I'm going to be treated, and I have been treated for a long time, in a very discriminatory fashion? Why would I do that? Why would I choose that birth? And it's a lovely question with one minor caveat. Dolores, the idea that I'm choosing my birth, choosing my parents, choosing all my circumstances, is an extraordinarily advanced position. And if that position doesn't allow me to look at my environment with benevolence and gentleness, then I wouldn't take that position. I would simply say, I happen to be African American, and I'm being discriminated against. What is this for? What am I going to do with this? I can tell you my own story of discrimination, which goes back to being 2 months old, and I was discriminated against because I was white. And I was put in a concentration camp simply because I was white. Then, and the reason I was in that camp was because I was white, and who was looking after me, who was actually were our keepers and our torturers, whatever you want to call them, were the camp guards, and they were Japanese. Okay, so that was the first bit. And when the war was over, 3.5 years later, and the Japanese capitulated, we ostensibly should have been freed. But by that time, the Indonesians, because the camps were on Java, the Indonesians turned against us because I was white. So that was the second bit of discrimination. And I was beaten up every day on my way to school by a group of 5 or 6 Indonesian boys my age, who thought they had the right to beat me up because I was white, and the whites had been beating them up for 300 years. So that was that. And then I finally moved to Holland when I was 8, and was put in a foster home and went to a school where I was called, believe it or not, nigger. And I was called nigger because I was very dark for having lived in the tropics for 8 years. And I was beaten up for being black. So that's 3, that's 4. Then one day I play against England in a hockey game. Somebody from behind bowls me over and says, "Take that, you fucking Jew." So that was number 5. So discrimination go any direction. I have to watch my own mind. Am I discriminating? Am I racist? And I have to be so careful with my own mind. And I know that doesn't answer your question yet, but it will. Really, ultimately, Dolores, the question can be answered best by saying, what is it for? There's something that's being offered to me. I am black. I'm discriminated against. We don't have a very good place in society, still don't, even though our president happens to be Afro-American, even though Mandela was an incredible example of what African Americans are capable of. And you'd be hard-pressed to find a leader worldwide over the last 100 years who had a greater role than Mandela. So what is it for? What am I being offered here? What am I learning from this? What is my judgment of myself? Somebody looks at me in a way that says, I am lesser than. That's the look that I'm seeing. That's the interpretation that I'm giving that look. I have to take that back immediately and say, is that true? Am I lesser than? And of course I'm not, because I am as God created me. I am the same as this white guy, or this yellow guy, or this blue guy, or this purple guy. I am the same. There is only the self, the capital S self. So now I look back at this person that looks at me with such disdain because I happen to be a different skin color. And I'm going to send him love because he needs it. He comes from a place of extraordinary insecurity, not knowing who he is, and he's projecting that insecurity and belief of lesser than on me. And what am I going to do with that? I'm going to transform it. And I'm going to see who he is really. I'm going to look at every white guy for a couple of days and make eye contact and say to myself, perhaps out loud, but that's a little risky, but certainly to myself, I love you. I know who you are. And by doing that, I'm giving myself the same message. And also by demonstrating that I'm not affected by how you see me just because I'm black. But I'm not affected by that. I know who I am. that I've transformed my fear of racism. And I still have to look at my own racism. That's my job too. So I hope that answers your question somewhat, Louis. Thank you.
That goes perfect with another question that came in, which is, what is projection? Could you speak a little bit on projection?
What is projection? Projection is one of the absolute sort of, I don't even know what to call it, but it's one of these teaching tools and mechanisms that make doing this work possible. If I recognize that everything I see is projection, and I use the word literally, everything I see is projection. I mean, you must have heard by now, because most of you are very experienced in this work, that the world is just a blank screen, and my mind projects all its ideas and thoughts upon it and beliefs, and then I see a world. That is literally the projection. It's just projection. I'm seeing a world that I'm projecting onto a blank screen. And then, as Ken Wapnick says so wonderfully, then we run to the screen and we try to change the characters on the screen, which will never work, of course, because they are my projection. So projection comes from who do I think I am? Who I think I am goes into the world and looks at the world to prove that who I think I am is who I am. But who I am has nothing to do with that in truth. Who I am in truth has nothing to do with that. Who I think I am is the one projecting. So projection is an incredibly useful tool to be continuously aware of. Whenever we work in the circle and somebody says you and then starts giving an opinion, and the whole circle will say, who? Meaning, who are you talking about really? So if I think, for example, to go back to Dolores' question, that somebody is racist, the first question I would have to ask myself, is that projection on my part? Am I racist? Could that be? And the answer is, of course, yes, of course that could be. We're all racist. We all have a preference in types of dog. I mean, I like a poodle better. I like a wolf better than a chihuahua. Is that racist? Yes, that's racist. So racism in itself is projection, and it serves a role. Carolina says, nice to see me with a red nose. Thank you, Carolina. Let's have another question.
Okay, Leva asks, what is wrong with being afraid of death? It seems that one is only really spiritual when that fear is gone. Well, mine is not at all.
Hi, Leva. I could be so mean to you. I'd say, well, start by stopping smoking. And, and there goes Jackie. It's okay, Andrew, just leave him. So the fear of death is the same as the fear of love. It's the same as the fear of God. So the fear of death is completely irrelevant in itself. But the fear of God and the fear of love and the fear of death are the same. Why is that? Why is that? First of all, it's a very weird statement to most people. But why is it true? And it's true because in death, as in love, as in God, I lose my identity. That's what I'm afraid of. Because my identity is the only thing I know. It's the only thing my ego says I know. The state of love, the state of God, the state of death is one in which I don't know. And for me to say I don't know is very, very scary. So the fear of death, yes, it does have all kinds of other parameters, but primarily it is the fear of loss of identity. There's a brilliant, brilliant little piece by Krishnamurti where he talks about what happens in death. And what happens in death is that you lose everything you think that was important. And you mourn that. You mourn the relationships. You mourn the good times you were going to have with your friends. You mourn the fact you can't talk to this person anymore. And if it's my own death I'm afraid of, I mourn the fact that I won't be able to talk to the people I love anymore. And in order to be completely and totally at peace, I have to go through this mourning. I have to strip it. I have to strip it of every answer the ego comes up with. One of those would be, well, once you're dead, you're at peace. Rest in peace. We've all heard that. However, if it's true, and again that the Advaita teaching is the truth, that everything is happening simultaneously, that there is an infinite number of universes playing out right now, this very second. That right now, this very second, I've probably died 422 times while I'm talking to you. I moved into other dimensions and back again. And if it's true that the only dimension I can be aware of is the one that I'm aware of, then it's perfectly okay to allow the possibility that maybe tomorrow morning I'll have an experience of a different dimension. Maybe tomorrow morning this whole world will have disappeared. Ramana Maharshi says it beautifully. He says, the world begins when I wake up, and the world ends when I go to sleep. There's no death in there. What happens when I fall asleep? Do I die? Who's the I that's asleep? While I'm asleep, I have very, very real experiences. But who's the I that's asleep? Who's the I that dies? And you and I, Liv, have had this discussion over the years that I've had the incredible joy and privilege to know you. I make up everything. I make up everything. So who the I is that is going to die is the I that believes that it's a body, is the I that identifies with the very, very, very finite identity that I made up. That I'm afraid to lose. What would happen if I lost that? Well, it's an insane question because nobody can answer that. I can only be immensely curious and actually look forward to what that experience will be like, because from my point of view, that would open the door when I lose my identity, whether I'm breathing still and walking on this planet or not. But when I'm losing my identity, which is another word for being enlightened, then I no longer have fear of anything. Not fear of death, not fear of love, not fear of God, not fear of a snake, not fear of anything. Fear will be gone because I know who I am. And I walk around the planet knowing who I am. And I'm sharing that with you. And you and I have shared this on many occasions and will continue to do so. I hope that answers your question. Next question.
Okay, Dan has a question. And Dan's question is, if happiness is a matter of choice, why wouldn't people choose to be happy?
Can you repeat this?
So Dan, I'm not sure which Dan it is, but hi Dan. That's my friend Dan Yaron. Beautiful. If happiness, Dan asks, if happiness is a choice, why would people not choose to be happy? And that is a brilliant question because it's something that absolutely astonishes all of us, and certainly me on so many occasions. I remember about 5 years ago or some 4 years ago, there was a woman here who had an extraordinary level of anxiety and fear and worry. And of course, with that came all kinds of side effects, none of which were pretty. And at one point, I said to her, just for a moment, assume, I'm not saying it's true, but just assume that the choice I have is between being absolutely innocent and absolutely loved and absolutely safe, and thereby being absolutely gloriously happy, if that were true, allowing that for a minute, and then I weigh that against how I'm feeling now, with all my worry and all my anxiety. Which would you choose? And this was asked in a circle of about 14 people, and the silence was deafening, because she could not answer. She was not prepared to say, well, of course I'm going to choose happiness. Of course I'm going to choose happiness. But we covered in the last question from Lieve, why is that such a tough choice? Because when I'm happy, I no longer need or want anything. I no longer have any desire. I no longer have to go somewhere. I no longer have to be with someone. I no longer have to eat or drink something that I absolutely love and think I need. In other words, all my desires have been released. And I cannot imagine what that would be like. Often we do a little exercise at our center and say, let's assume that Absolute peace is what I want. Can I honestly say with my hand on my heart that absolute peace is all I want? Or am I opening the door within 2 seconds, or 1 second, or a millisecond, for the ego comes in and says, yeah, great, and this is how we're going to do it. Because that's how it works. So the ego immediately comes in and says, I know how to do that. You need this. And then guess what? We're back into needing this, or not needing this. Or if only this wasn't in my life, I'd be happy. If only I had enough money, if Choose Again had so much money in the bank that we could help everybody for free, then I'd be happy. But it's all insane. It's all insane. So the only way to choose happiness, truly choose happiness, is to joyfully accept what is, and whatever that is. And if it's a circumstance that my ego says is a disaster, and God knows many of us are experiencing that even today, circumstances that we absolutely are scared shitless of, and say, this is how it is. There's a beautiful line in Stephen Levine's book where he talks about what to do when a life-threatening illness strikes. And he says something so beautiful about that. And he says, may we get the most out of this. May we get the most out of this. And that to me is such a beautiful position. So if I'm in an unhappy situation, then I need to look at what is this for, what's being offered. Because my decision has been made a long time ago. My decision is to be happy. So if I find myself in a situation that goes against my decision, then I have to ask, who's the I that decided to be unhappy right now? What is that for? What am I being offered? Because that I is not me. So that I right now has a belief that is simply not true. That I is mistaken. And then I return to the capital I, and that I chooses automatically joy and happiness because it has no other choice. It sees no alternative. It's the ego that has created alternatives. And because it was made up by the ego, it can never have any validity at all. I hope that answers your question.
So Ginny asked, how do these principles apply to physical illness? It seems to disrupt happiness.
So Jenny asks, how do these principles play out in a state of physical illness? So I think I sort of talked about that in the answer to Dan, Jenny, and that is that physical illness is just part of who I am at the moment. So if I have a physical ailment, and I've had a number, you can't be 71 and not have had a few, I have learned to ask, what is this for? What is being offered right now? What is really being offered? Well, ultimately what's being offered is for me to really look at the belief that I'm a body. Am I really this body? And of course, in the Western world, the emphasis on body has been dramatically overplayed. And then there's been sort of a lip service being paid to spirituality by saying, well, we're actually both. We're both body and spirit. And you have to know, you have to hear how impossible that is. Because if I'm spirit, I'm formless, abstract, unlimited love. Spirit is formless, abstract, unlimited love. I cannot be a body and spirit. Because that would mean that I could place a limitation or a restriction on infinity. Well, that's a bit of a challenge. So what is my physical illness for? That's for me to find out when I have it. But do ask the question, if you are struggling right now with a physical illness, and a good friend of mine in Vancouver was recently diagnosed with leukemia, and she's extremely well trained, and she's asking that question every day now. What is this for? What's being offered? Not how could this happen to me? And please don't go to the new age disastrous comment of how did you create this? Some of you know the little story about the workshop where this woman announced that she had just been diagnosed with breast cancer. And there was a New Age gentleman sitting next to her who turned to her and in his best New Age dialect said, "Well, how did you create that?" Whereupon she smacked him in his face and said, "How did you create that?" So it's not about creating an illness. It's not about, I have attracted this illness. Yes, you can go there if you want. But is it loving? Will that lead you to a loving place? Or will that lead you to a place of feeling guilty and stupid for having done that? Don't go there. Just go to, what is it for? What's being offered? Yes, I have this illness. What is it for? There's a lesson being offered. There's something in this that I need to learn, and I want to learn it. That's what I'm on this planet for. So I hope that answers your question, Jenny.
Dana has a question regarding the 6-step process and how this all relates to the process, and if you can give some background history on your beliefs and the 6-step process you developed.
Background history on my beliefs? How much time is this webinar? 22 hours?
15 more minutes.
Oh, I thought we were going to talk a week or two. I'll keep it simple, Dan. My beliefs and yours, by the way, are formed pretty well from the moment you're born, and sometimes in utero. Now, in utero, I never believed till I found out for myself that yes, actually, I too had received messages in utero, and I too had believed them. And so I dropped any reservation as to when or how these messages I received, but I received them. And what happens when I receive a message, I'll give you a little story on that, and that might give you an idea, and then you can pursue your own journey in that direction. But one day, about 4 years ago at the center, there were some people here, and one of them was just visiting, and that visitor created an incredible state of unrest amongst everybody here. It's a very harmonious environment. It's a very loving environment. And when an outsider comes in who doesn't want to do this work and who's really hell-bent on creating havoc, it's upsetting. So everything was going wrong. Absolutely everything was going wrong. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I had this unbelievably dark, black feeling that I don't remember ever having, but I know damn well that I don't make new feelings. So any feeling is a replay. So I wanted to find out, where did this feeling come from? So I did a process on it. It was a holotropic breathing. And what came out of the breathing was that when my mother was pregnant, and she fled from what is now Jakarta, which was called Batavia in the old days, but she and my father fled from Batavia, or Jakarta, into the mountains south of Bandung. And during that travel, what do you think she was thinking? This is not a good time to be pregnant. She was 9 months pregnant, fleeing from the Japanese invasion. This is not a good time to be pregnant. I picked that up, not the words, but the energy. And the energy told me, you should not have been born. Now that's a belief I never thought I had, but there it was. So then I do a correction on that, and that is, forgive me for believing that I should not have been born. And the answer is, thank God that is not true. You are born, and therefore you should have been born. You're here for a very specific purpose, and so are you. So that gives you a tiny idea of how a belief is formed. I'll give you another anecdote, and that's an old friend of mine in Vancouver, who came to see me, and I said, he's very handsome, very successful in many areas of his life, really has no problems, doesn't drink, doesn't do drugs, isn't particularly depressed, more depressed than anybody else. But he came to me and told me about a problem that he was having with women. He had no trouble attracting women. And when he attracted a woman, which was invariably a very handsome woman, they were very happy for 2 or 3 months. And then every single time, this woman turned out to be too busy. She then turned out to have a career. She had other obligations that she had to take care of that were more important than he was. And he got the message over and over again, we don't have time for you. So he came to see me, and we did our normal process, which I'll explain in a second. Actually, I'll explain it right now. So the first step of that process is I'm upset. Well, he clearly was upset because girlfriend number 22 had just announced that she was no longer be able to see him because her career had become so important she was going to pursue that. So he was upset. Step two is a very, very, very difficult step that people resist and resent and fight against, and that is it's about me. So we had to recognize this is not about my girlfriend, this is not about other women in my life, this is about me. And once he was willing to take that step, the transformation had actually begun. The third step was then to ask him, how does it feel? How do you feel when you get a phone call from a woman that you're madly in love with, and she says, I really love you, it's not about you, but my work is sending me to Saskatchewan, and I'm going to follow this career, it's very important to me. How does that feel? So he went into the feeling, and that's what you and I have to do. Go into the feeling, make it really big, feel it. And then ask yourself, is this a familiar feeling? Are there other circumstances that I feel this? And the answer always is, of course there are. I feel this all the time because I've removed the feeling from the story. Do you get it? So I've removed the feeling from the story. The story is my girlfriend is moving to Saskatchewan. She wants to be an executive, which is more important than I am. I've removed the story from the solution. The solution will never be found in the story. So then he went to the feeling. And I said, okay, take this feeling, close your eyes, make it big, really feel it, and go back to being a little boy. And what's happening right now in your life when you were little and the first time you have this feeling? And he was remarkable because he was wide open to this process, and he immediately said, I'm 3 years old, I was playing in the yard, I stubbed my toe, it was bleeding, and I ran into the kitchen and said, Mommy, Mommy, Mommy. Mommy turned around and said, not now, I'm busy. You get it? What happened at that moment, he made up that women would never have time for him. That no matter what was happening with him, the woman of his life, which was his mother, the only woman that mattered in his life, was busy. She didn't have time for him. So we reinterpreted that. We did a forgiving on, forgive me for believing that my mother doesn't have time for me. What does it say about me that my mother doesn't have time for me? It says I'm not important. Forgive me for believing I'm not important. Thank God that is not true. I made that up that moment. Forgive me for believing that if I were more important, people would pay attention to me. Thank God that is not true. Forgive me for believing that the fact that my mother didn't have time for me says that she didn't love me, that I'm not lovable. And then the forgiveness immediately is again, thank God that is not true. I made that up. It is not true. Does that answer your question? So we went through the process. I'll run through it one more time so you're really clear on it. And actually, if you send us a quick email, we'll be happy to send this process out to you. And then you can study it, read it, start practicing it. So it goes like this. Step 1, I'm upset. Step 2, this is about me. Really, really do that step because it stops the story. Step 3, how do I feel? And in the beginning, it's not easy. I can tell you in the beginning when I first started doing this work, I had 2 feelings, numb and rage. It took me a long time, and it took me great willingness and a determination to start nuancing feelings. So, what am I feeling? Is that feeling familiar? The answer is always yes. And the next step is take it back. Take it back to your earliest memory. Now, your earliest memory may be in utero, as it has been in my case once at least. The earliest memory may be 5 years ago. It doesn't have to be something as dramatic as in utero. It can be simply, I remember 5 years ago this happened, and this is what my feelings were at the time. That's wonderful. Then ask yourself, what was my decision about myself at that moment? What did I decide about me at that moment? Who was I in that situation? And then you know the core belief that you made up in that circumstance. So go back to my friend with the stubbed toe and his mother saying, I don't have time. I lost my track. Okay, that his mother said, I don't have time. He made up that he was not important. You could have had the same thing, running with the stubbed toe, and your mom would have said, I don't have time, and you would have said, that's okay, Mom, it's not that bad. So it doesn't mean that everybody is going to make up the same beliefs in the same circumstance, but I made up beliefs in a circumstance, and you made up beliefs in a circumstance. That's all that matters. There's no better beliefs and not worse beliefs. They're all untrue. That's the only thing you have to keep in mind. That's a word. I hope that makes sense. And I'll be very happy to do some follow-up on that later with you. Next question, please.
Regina has another question, and she asks, I'm ending my 4th relationship in 15 years, all abusive in some form. Why? Why do I keep doing this?
Why do you keep ending it? That's probably not what you're asking. You say, why do I keep entering them and why do I keep repeating it? Well, you have no choice. You have no free will. That's good news. The reason I say you don't have choice is because your beliefs say you deserve this. You made up a belief a long, long time ago that says, I believe I deserve to be abused. I don't deserve to be in a happy relationship. Now, when you made that up, that's up to you to find out and to really go after. But in order to transform it, in order to transform that belief, you have to know when you made it up and how you made it up, under what circumstances. Because if you don't change that belief, and if I don't change my beliefs, I will continue to attract the same evidence over and over and over. And that's unbelievably good news. So the fact that you're now finishing your 4th abusive relationship is fantastic. That tells me that maybe you're now ready to start taking ownership. Because what's the constant in these 4 relationships? That's me. That's you, actually, in this case. So you're the constant in these relationships. You're the one that keeps going back to these people and finding them and attracting them. And you didn't know what the purpose was, but now you do. The purpose is to heal that belief. So let's assume that you're not going to do any work between now and when you meet the next person. And you'll meet the next person maybe 6 months from now when you feel you're ready for a relationship. And you feel the strong attraction for Peter at work. And you and Peter seem to share this attraction. And you go for a drink or you go for dinner. And then you sit down with Peter and you say, Peter, I have a belief that I deserve to be in an unhappy relationship. I have a belief that I deserve to be abused. It's an insane belief, but I have that belief. And I have a hunch that you have a similar belief. Now, in your case, it may take the form that you're an abuser. That could well be. Are you interested in healing this? So can you imagine how exciting that date will be? Because what you're doing with that date is you're laying the foundation for a true relationship. And what's the purpose of a true relationship? The only purpose for a real relationship is healing. There is no other purpose. Because I will always be attracted to my beliefs. And my beliefs will always come in within a period of time, however long the honeymoon takes. It will take 2 weeks, sometimes the honeymoon takes a day or 2, sometimes it takes 6 months, sometimes it takes a few years, but sooner or later the honeymoon is over, and what happens then? God damn it, I'm looking at my beliefs again. The same beliefs come up again. I'm once again with the same person. So if I set a purpose for the relationship right at the start, that first date with Peter, you sit down and you say, I've been in abusive relationships. I feel attracted to you. That can only mean that the same thing is going to happen again because I am coming into this relationship with my beliefs. Those beliefs will demand evidence. Does that make sense? If I have a belief about myself, they will demand evidence and the evidence will come. So the only free will I have is to change my beliefs. If I don't change my beliefs, I have no free will. The beliefs run the show. I will attract the next abuser. My abuse may well take a different form. It may look completely different from the other form, but it will happen. So that's the purpose for this abusive relationship cycle that you're in. And the real purpose is to step out and say, I'm not doing it anymore. I want to know who I am. I want to know who I am truly. I am not a person that deserves to be abused. I made that up a long time ago. And there's a very good chance that my hunch is that you were abused when you were little, or you saw abuse being part of your family constellation when you were small. And that's where it comes from. That doesn't mean you're a victim. You're never a victim. Take ownership of your life. Say, I'm not doing this anymore. I know who I am. So either when you enter into the next relationship, you enter it into it very consciously and deliberately and with all the beliefs on the table, or you get to work really hard on yourself and by yourself. Either way will work. But you deserve to be happy. You deserve to have a gloriously happy relationship. That's a fact. And I hope that helps. Next question.
Sean has a question, and Sean asks, is it ever about forgiving others, or is it always about forgiving oneself?
Sean, that is a good question. It's a question that comes up often, and I will answer it only what works for me. I'm not saying that this has to be how you do it. I come from a position very strongly now that no one can do anything to me or has ever done anything to me. So what is that to forgive? There's an amazing line in A Course in Miracles which says, teach him that whatever he may try to do to you, your perfect freedom from the belief that you can be harmed shows him that he's guiltless. I'll say it one more time. Teach him that whatever he may try to do to you, your perfect freedom from the belief that you can be harmed shows him that he's guiltless. Think about what that means. That means I don't have to forgive anybody because they can't hurt me. I thought they did. My father had a somewhat unfortunate temper, which I now know was nothing but a cry for love. And he would beat me regularly 2 or 3 times a week. Normal therapy would urge me to forgive him. The work we do doesn't go there. Because what my father did was, first of all, down to my body, and I'm not a body. We discovered that earlier. I'm just spirit. So what you do to my body has absolutely no effect on who I am. But also, why was it so unbelievably hurtful? It was not just physically. I mean, physically, I'm pretty tough. I can take a lot of physical abuse. But it was hurtful emotionally because I believed that it meant that he didn't love me. I meant that it believed that I was a bad person. I believed that it meant that nobody would ever love me. Those are the beliefs I made up around the abuse. But they have nothing to do with him. I made those up. He is innocent. He is whole. He is complete. I forgot that I'm innocent and whole and complete. Now, the fact that he also forgot it doesn't matter. He doesn't have to change. I have to do my work. So there are other people that work with forgiving others, and that's wonderful. If that works for you, by all means do. But I have a feeling that every time I say to someone, I forgive you, I'm saying you really did hurt me, and you really did something wrong, and I wish you hadn't done it, but I forgive you. That means that I'm a victim. I could be a victim in that circumstance, and I'm not a victim. I will not ever accept the victim label or mantle. I'm not taking it. I'm innocent, but so are you. And the only forgiveness that I do and the only forgiveness I need to do is for the belief that I can be harmed. Or for the belief that I could harm somebody else. I can't hurt you either. Well, in the beginning, that sounds very, very difficult and very strange, particularly if you've been hurt a lot in your life. But once you start accepting the fact that you cannot be a victim, I can absolutely guarantee you, when I accepted the fact that I could not be a victim and turned my life around dramatically, with incredible clarity, I cannot be a victim. Now, I can tell you all kinds of victim stories, but none of them are true. But my hunch is that we have 7 billion wonderful little people on the planet that are all addicted to a state of being victim. And unless we heal that, we're going to continue finding victimizers. And we keep finding them. Because that's not too hard. If I'm a victim, I will find a victimizer. Because I cannot be a victim unless you victimize me. So I need you to victimize me. So I get to be right that I'm a victim. Do you hear how I'm saying that is? Let it go. You're not a victim. I'm not a victim. No one can hurt me. Thank you.
So Mark asks, one of the things I can still find difficult to totally own is being 100% responsible for anything that happens, especially if so-called others are obviously behaving insanely. Diederik, can you elaborate on this a bit, highlighting the radicalness of this teaching and its scope, and how it always can simultaneously be used as a loving and kind reminder for myself?
Well, you just said it. Use it as a loving reminder for yourself. It's the whole idea that I can be hurt. Was that the question? I'm not really, it was a long question. Can you repeat it?
He's basically what he's saying, one of the things he finds it difficult to take 100% responsibility for everything. So basically he's having a problem with step 2.
Yeah. And surprise, surprise, Mark, so does every single individual that ever hears it. Every person that hears step 2 says, bullshit, that's not true. He did it to me, she did it to me, they did it to me. This is what happened. You don't understand. Didn't you hear my story? On and on and on. And the only way out of it is to accept step 2. But how can I accept step 2 and not turn it into a guilt trip on myself? That's the question really on the table. If I believe that something went wrong, and step 2 says it's about me, then it means that I'm an idiot, or I'm stupid, or I deserved it, or whatever else my ego will immediately throw at me. So that won't work. So how do I get to step 2 and use it as a loving tool? And that is a very good point that somebody made up in a discussion on Facebook a couple of days ago. I think it was my friend Daniel Matte who said, well, that's a very difficult position to take, and it is difficult. So how about if you shift it a little bit? How about if I shift to a faith-based position, which says that everything is always for me? Everything is always for me. Einstein asked, is this world a benevolent place? And the answer is yes. So if everything is always for me, then it's easy to take 100% accountability. Because then all I have to do is say, well, this is for me. I don't feel it. This feels like shit. I absolutely hate it. I wish it hadn't happened. But it's for me because that's my faith-based position, and I'm unshakable on that. So I'm going to find out, how is this for me? We go back to the person who had 4 abusive relationships. The same question. How is this for me? Not for me, this keeps happening to me, because that doesn't get me anywhere. It gets me to the next abusive relationship. But how is this for me? What am I going to do with this? So once that becomes the foundation from which I operate, then you can see it's not that hard to take ownership. Because now the ownership I'm taking is simply to see, okay, I'm going to see it's Christmas, obviously, because it's Christmas every day, and there's all these things around me, they're all packages. I'm going to open the packages. I want to see what's in them, what's being offered right now. There's a gift. I wonder what it is. You know the expression, there's so much shit here, there must be a pony somewhere. That's where it comes from. That's what that means. There's always, always, always a loving, healing message in whatever happens to me. And if you're willing to go there, you'll find that too. And it is fun. It becomes more and more fun. I hope that answers your question, Mark.
Craig has a question, and Craig would like to know, how do I question everything all the time and function in this fast-paced real world?
Is it fast-paced? Or do I experience it as fast-paced? Is this the real world, or is this a world that I call real? How much does it take really to question everything? The answer to that is meditate, 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 meditate. What does that mean? And that is train my mind. I have to train my mind to observe my thoughts. And that's a mind training. Am I worth the effort? Because everybody is, oh, that's going to be a lot of work. I don't have time for that. I live in a fast-paced real world. I don't have time for that. Well, if you don't have time for it, don't do it. And continue doing what you're doing. How does that feel? Are you having fun yet? And if it's not working for you, you will make time. If it's not working for you, you will make the effort. But as long as you're not totally miserable, or as long as you've not reached the point where you say there has to be another way, nothing really matters. You'll continue doing what you're doing. You won't have time in the fast pace. But I can tell you, when I started doing this work, I was desperate. I really had to do it. It was that or it was over. And there were lessons I was doing, and one of the lessons required me to meditate 5 minutes on the hour of every waking hour. And I would be in a board meeting, and I would excuse myself and go meditate for 5 minutes on the hour. I would be on the freeway, I would pull over and meditate for 5 minutes on the hour. In other words, I had made a decision, God damn it, I'm worth it. I'm going to do it. I don't care how fast-paced this world appears to be. That's nonsense. The world is fast-paced as I want it to be. I can see it as a beautiful, calm, flowing river, or I can see it as a hurricane. But that's my choice. I'm choosing it. The world in itself is neither fast-paced nor not fast-paced. The world in itself is neither hectic nor not hectic. It just is what it is. It's my interpretation. It's what I'm going to do with it. So if I decide I'm worth it, I will find time to meditate. Meditating does not mean, it can, but it does not mean to sit in a lotus position and say Om and chant and see wonderful things coming out of your chest. That could happen. But meditating to me is, I'm going to watch my thoughts all day. And if I don't watch my thoughts, I'm certainly going to watch my feelings. Because my feelings go right after my thoughts. So I have to thought that Andy is a jerk and he almost screwed up all the tech stuff. A feeling comes up with that. What is the feeling? What is the feeling? The feeling says, I'm not worth having a tech in-house who knows what he's doing. That's the feeling. I'm not worthy. Is that true? No, I'm not. What happens to Andy then? He becomes an innocent child of God immediately, who did the best he could. It's not hectic. It's not a frantic world. The frantic world is in my mind. Slow your mind down. Slow your mind down. Start watching your thoughts. Start watching them as if you're I always compare it to, I don't know if you've been to Paris, and if you haven't been to Paris, it won't mean much, but around the Arc de Triomphe, there is a circular, I think 6 or 7 or 8 lane road that runs around it. And if you stand on the sidewalk, you can see all these cars going around the Arc de Triomphe, some at great speed, some honking their horns, some beautiful cars, some old jalopies, it doesn't matter. Now, if I'm meditating, I'm watching the cars. If I'm not meditating, I jump on the first car and I find myself in Bordeaux. I didn't want to go to Bordeaux. How did I get here? Well, I was unconscious. I had a moment of unconsciousness. I jumped on a thought. I followed the thought into an incredible story, and I ended up in a place I had no intention of being. Actually, I ended up in a frantic world. I have no intention of being in a frantic world. So train my mind to meditate, train my mind to watch, train my mind to observe, train my mind to be still. We have a wonderful book by Punja, who was a student, or yeah, I guess a student of Ramana Maharshi's. And on every page, he says, all you have to do is this, simply be quiet. That doesn't mean don't talk, but it does mean don't believe your thoughts. Don't run with them. Don't build stories with them. Don't justify your feelings and your thoughts by being right about something. Just step back and watch the thought. And the world won't appear anywhere near as frantic as you think it does now. Cool? Next question.
Jenny wants to know, how long did it take before your responses became automatic after you attained this knowledge and this process?
I hope within the next 30 years that will happen. It's not happened yet, Jenny, I'm sorry. But it does become more and more the default program. So you will never hear me say that I'm enlightened and I've done my work and I'm done. If you hear anybody say that, run as fast as you can, because you're dealing with someone who hasn't really done the work at all yet. My work is ongoing, and so is yours. It's not automatic yet. It's a lot quicker than it ever was before, and it's a lot quicker than I ever thought possible, that's for sure. And how long did that take? That probably began to happen in the first year that I was doing this work, about 20 years ago. When I first started really watching my mind and watching my thoughts and becoming more and more vigilant and more diligent in my vigilance, it became easier and easier and easier. And now, I guess to outsiders, it would appear that it's not easy to shake me anymore. That doesn't mean I don't have my process. It doesn't mean I'm not doing my work anymore and that I don't have to do my work anymore. If you're in a relationship and I'm in a relationship and we're all in relationships, you will be doing your work because it will keep coming up. It will keep coming up over and over and over. My beliefs will keep showing. There's another belief. There it is again. Oh, I thought I was done with that. That's interesting. So meditation is so incredibly important because it will tell me, it will show me where my thoughts are and who's doing the thinking. The thinking is done by the I that I think I am. And as we've discussed now, that I is not me. That is not me. I made that I up. That I is an invention. I made it up. It doesn't exist. And I have to undo it. And I undo it lovingly, not by being nasty to myself and saying, oh shit, there you go again. Stupid idiot, you get triggered again, you shouldn't be triggered. Yes, I was triggered. Wonderful, I'm glad. Little work to be done. So it's not automatic for me, and if you meet someone who says it's automatic for them, I don't know. God bless him, let's say that.
Eve has a question.
Hi, Eve.
And Eve wants to know, besides brushing your teeth, what's the best way to start and end your day?
What a beautiful question. I don't start my day with brushing my teeth. Maybe I should. I think the most beautiful way to start my day is to wake up and say, how can I serve? How can I serve? One of my favorite quotes is from Rabindranath Tagore, an Indian poet and philosopher who wrote, I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I woke and saw that life was service. I acted and found that service was joy. So the best day for me to start my day, the best way for me to start my day is to say to myself out loud or just inner discussion is how can I serve today? Not what can I get? Not what is so-and-so going to do for me? What am I going to tell somebody to do so I have a better life? No, how can I serve? And the more I come from that place, the more joyful my life is. So that would be the start of the day. At the end of the day, I would say would be in meditation and a meditation of gratitude. So look back on the day and look at all the incredibly wonderful things that I have in my life, the wonderful people. I didn't see them as wonderful several times today, but I'm going to correct that. I'm going to say, I know who they are. I didn't see that today. And I'm going to go back to a deep gratitude for absolutely everything and everyone in my life, including the so-called setbacks, including the so-called hardships, including illness, including whatever has come my way. I'm going to express gratitude. At the center, we have a wonderful practice, which we do every night, and that's over dinner. We all do a gratitude. And that gratitude can be for whatever happened in the day, whatever I learned in the day, whatever realization I received, whatever insight, whatever encounter, whatever discussion or conversation I had with someone, whatever kindness someone did to me. Very, very often it's about the food, because the food here is absolutely incredibly wonderful. So that's usually my first gratitude, is just to be really grateful for having superb and wonderful food every day. Then I'm really grateful for the people in my life, the people that show me who I am. Remember, we talked about projection a little earlier, because everybody I see is nothing other than a projection from my mind. I'm incredibly grateful to have all these people in my mind so I can keep doing my work. I'm really grateful for the fact that I have somehow managed to end up living in a situation where I get to do nothing but my own work on myself every day. What an incredible gratitude that deserves. But if you think about it, so do you. You've also created an environment where you can do your work every day on yourself. And so express gratitude for that. And then watch what happens to my mind when I do a profound gratitude later, before I go to sleep. I almost said late. Well, late here means 9 o'clock in the evening. Past 9, it's very late for us. But that's because we're up at 4:30 or 5. But finish the day with a gratitude. And you'll find you'll have a wonderful sleep. But thank you for the question.
Okay, Andre has a question, and it's very similar to what you're speaking about. And the question is, when I wake up and I feel a general feeling of discontent, but I'm not quite sure why, how do I identify what I need to do? Is the answer meditate, or is there more?
Well, since I don't know what you mean by meditate, I can't say yes, that's the answer, or no, it's not the answer, because only you know what you mean by that. But if I wake up with a feeling of discontent, and I used to wake up at about 3:30, 4 o'clock with burning anxiety. When that happens, it doesn't happen anymore. It hasn't happened in a long time, but when it happened, I had to immediately do our work with that. Go into the process. What is this feeling of discontent saying about me, Andre? That's the question. What is it saying about me? Not about my wife, not about my work situation, not about the house, not about the weather, but what is it saying about me? I have a feeling of discontent. What is the message I'm giving myself about Andre right now? That's my question. And then the answer will come. It says, I need this, or I need something else, or I don't have what I want. And some people actually believe that it's possible to be bored. I happen to know it's impossible to be bored, because being bored means I'm not giving love. And if I'm not giving love, I'm not receiving love. Well, then I have a sense of discontentment. I'm not giving love. Wow. I woke up in the morning, I felt discontent. Could it be that I have a belief that I'm not lovable, that I'm not giving love? Could it be that I believe that somebody else should be giving me something that I don't have? These are questions you have to ask for yourself. And you'll find the answer really quickly. But are you worth doing that little bit of inquiry first thing in the morning? For myself, with the anxiety, it was invariably that whatever I was going to do, it would be wrong. That was an old belief I made up a long time ago, and it's absolutely not true. That was an invention of my mind, not true. I hope that answers your question, Andre.
Okay, Judith has a question, and Judith wonders, do you ever feel that there are people in your life that you need to avoid because of the triggers they bring up?
I absolutely need to avoid them if I don't want to heal. There's many people in my life I would love to avoid, and that the result would be that I would have to keep my beliefs about myself, and so the ego says, stay away from them. Anybody that triggers me, anybody that annoys me, can only do so if they bring to light something that I'm believing about myself. Otherwise, I would not be triggered. So why would I avoid that person? Now, eventually, once I've totally healed that, let's say that somebody likes playing loud music and it annoys the hell out of me. I need to do my work on that. Okay, why does it annoy me? It says it means they don't love me, because if they love me, they wouldn't play loud music. It means they don't love me because they love me. They knew that I only like classical music or very good jazz. If they loved me, they would know that I would love to have silence, on and on and on and on. So what does it say about me that they don't love me to the degree that they play loud music? It says that I'm not lovable. That's my belief that's being triggered by this person that plays loud music. Now, when I get to the point where I'm no longer triggered, in other words, I'm no longer emotionally involved with the loud music, then I'm in a place to avoid it. Does that make sense? It's a very, very fine line, because the ego will use that. But it's a very fine line where I'm completely at peace with my relationship. And this is a relationship we're talking about. When I'm completely at peace with my relationship, then it doesn't matter whether I'm in it or not. But I'm not avoiding it. I hope that makes sense. That's not an easy question and not an easy answer, and one that you and I will have to explore for ourselves, and with considerable love and patience and delicacy. So thank you for the question.
Okay, so this is going to be the last question, and sorry.
We just started.
We weren't able to get to all of them, and we will answer the ones we didn't answer today on the Saturday. So Regina wants to know, does awareness, healing, feeling, happiness come in waves, or can it be constant?
Well, wouldn't it be nice if it was constant? Wouldn't it be nice if this process was one wonderful straight hill? Everything, actually downhill is easier because you don't have to work so hard. Yeah, that'd be fun, but it's not. The ego is a very persistent little beast. It never gives up. It goes 24 hours a day. It is far more vigilant than I am. It never ceases to tell me what a jerk and what a loser I am. It never stops. So sometimes it gets to me. Sometimes I believe what it says. So then I have a little dip. But the dips, and this is the good news, the dips become less and less deep. And so it is a spiral. It is an upward spiral. And it has dips. It goes down sometimes, and sometimes I do feel depressed. Absolutely. Where before a depression would last years and was accompanied by vast amounts of alcohol and drugs, now a depression will last maybe 20 seconds. And so what the hell am I doing? What am I believing? What am I believing about me right now? Is this true? No, it is not. This is old stuff, and you made it up so long ago it makes me sick. So let it go. It's not true. It's absolute nonsense. So the answer to your question is yes, you will have dips, and yes, you will have downs, and everybody else will too, and that's perfectly fine. Don't judge them. Don't judge them. Don't ever make yourself wrong. So you got angry. You yelled at your child. Well, you yelled at your child. What does it say about you? Wow, it says that I yelled at my child. That's what it says. It doesn't say anything else about you. But who's the I that chose to yell at my child? That's what I want to look at. That I is fearful, that I is lonely, that I doesn't know how to deal with my child. I need some water. And that I is not who I am. So then I need to do my forgiveness. Forgive me for believing. that I'm a monster. Because who would yell at their child? What's my judgment of myself that I yell at my child? Well, that's a pretty harsh judgment. So forgive me for myself for believing that I am that person. I'm not. I did yell, absolutely. I'm not denying that. And it was a cry for love on my part, and I'm going to give love to it. The bottom line is you and I are innocent. The bottom line, no matter how deep your dips are, how far you go down again, you will come back again. That's inevitable. The result of this work is absolutely a foregone conclusion for all of us. It's just a matter of when. When do I want to do my work? And I can't remember who it was, but it was a wonderful saying, if not now, when? So let's start. Let's all do it together. Let's get together as we did today. Let's continue this work together and continue to work on beliefs that are absolutely insane and absolutely untrue, and return to the truth of who you and I are. And I really thank you all for being here, for taking the time out, and I look forward to maybe more of these. So, thank you very much. See you on Saturday.